Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. Just leaving the gym. It was leg day, and it's like 9:50 right now. I got here at like 7:30, something around there. Toby isn't here. He's in Tahoe now. Again, traveling again. Crazy, man. I'm kind of jealous. I've never been to Tahoe. Also, I did see some amazing sunsets that I'll put into this video if you want to see them. Look at this sunset. It's amazing. But it's awesome because he's going to see some of his friends that he met online down there. So that's really cool. But anyways, while I was at the gym, I listened to a couple different videos. I think I listened to, I finished one where it was just the diary of the CEO guy just talking in a video where he wasn't interviewing people, he was answering questions that he got asked. And then I listened to two other ones, like parts of them, and like another Simon Sinek one. I think that's how you say his last name. Simon Sinek. And he has some really good insights about stuff, and they're just talking about like finding your why mostly. Like that's his big thing, is helping people find their why. And he's like, a lot of people, everyone knows what they do. Some people know, how they do it, and then rarely anyone knows why they do it. And like, I mean, I've talked about this in a lot of other videos, and it's like finding your why is the most important thing like that you can do, because if you have a why for something, then you're gonna do it because you have a reason to do it. Like when people ask you what you're doing, or like why you're doing something, or you say no reason, for no reason, just because, then what are you doing it for? Like, what's the point? You have to be doing it for something, or else you wouldn't be doing it. Because it's like, there would be no other point to do it if you didn't have a why. There would be no reason. So he was talking about that, and then he was talking about like having friends and having like a tribe, because we're tribal animals. And when you think about it, like, humans are just animals. Like, I was also listening to Earl Nightingale, like 20-minute video, and he's an old school like motivational speaker kinda, and he was talking about like the only thing that separates men from other animals is their mind. Every other part of a man you can find on a horse or a pig. He's like, just let that sink in. The only thing that separates a man from any other animal is what's in his mind. Everything else about a man can be found on a horse or a pig. That's just crazy. You might be thinking, oh, well, what about fingers? Yeah, think about a monkey, right? But they don't have our brains. They don't have our mind. And so I was listening to him, Earl Nightingale, and then there was a Jim Rohn. He's really cool. And I've listened to a couple of his things before, and I listened to one today. It was like a 20-minute clip, and he's like, well, in 10 years you're gonna get to your destination, but to what destination, you don't, like, depends on what you're doing today. And if you're not gonna change, well, he said tomorrow, he said if you're not gonna change what you do tomorrow, then your next 5 years are going to be the same as the last 5 years. If you don't change, then they're going to stay the same. And it's so true. And then he's talking about like how it's life. Like, there's an expiration date on life. And one day, like, you expire. Just like any food that you buy, well, that isn't preserved. Has preservatives, or I guess honey. I don't think honey ever expires, but you know what I mean. Everything expires. And like, just while I listened to that, and I was at the gym and I was looking around, I mean, in Idaho, it's mostly retired older people at the gym. But even them, like, I was looking around, 99% of people don't move with any sense of urgency. Like, they think this is going to last forever. Like, and almost everyone that I know does the same thing. They're just sitting there, no urgency. They have no clue. They don't care at all about anything. Like, they're just there. Well, they're not really even there, because they're on their phones or they're doing whatever else. And it's just so weird to me. It's like, what are you doing? Do you understand this thing that we're living in right now? And who was saying it? It was on one of the Diary of a CEO interviews. I forget which one. But the guy was talking about how he stood by 2 deathbeds, and he said both of the deathbeds, the people right before they died, they were talking about how fast life goes. And it's so true. It's like, I mean, it's hard for me to understand, but I can see it just talking to other older people, and every single one of them says it, so it has to be true. Where, like, in my life, I thought it was going really slow, because, you know, when you're at school and you're looking up at the clock and you're like, you look up at the clock and it's 2:15, and then it feels like 2 hours, and you look back up at the clock and it's 2:17. It's like, so I thought life was really long, and I mean, it depends how you look at it, but at the end of the day, the time is going to pass no matter how you spend it, and looking back, it usually seems better than it was, and usually seems a lot quicker than it was too. But I mean, looking back is a completely different perspective, and that's another thing that's funny, is perspectives. Like Simon Sinek was saying, when in like his company, when his like some employees would talk about other employees, and they would say like, oh, this guy is like not a good person, doesn't treat the other employees right. But then he's like, because he's the boss, he's like, really? Because they treat me really well. And then he said, he called it the tree of monkeys, because when you're on like a higher level, you're the higher part of the tree looking down, all you see is smiles. But when you're at the lower level looking up, all you see is buttholes. But it was funny, because like, that is so true too. The tree of monkeys. And yeah, so I was just listening to those things, and got me thinking. Oh, and in the Jim Rohn video, he was talking about like, well, if you think about life this way, like, the woman that wants to bake the apple pie is going to look up a recipe on how to bake an apple pie. But if another one doesn't ever think about wanting to bake an apple pie, then what's the point in looking up the recipe of making an apple pie, right? And then he related it to like men and income. And it's like, well, if somebody wants to make more money and to be more successful, then they're gonna look up the recipe to make more money and be more successful. And that's the thing too, like going back to Simon Sinek talking about like why friends are so important. And I feel like that is so true, because I think personally, just from what I've noticed and from what I've heard amongst these like successful people that I listen to, is that the people that you surround yourself with is the easiest way to change your habits. Because like, if you really break it down on all the things that you should change in your life, like working out, eating healthier, working more efficiently, longer hours, staying focused more, working more on your goals. And it's like, if you think about it by yourself, you're like, that is a ton of things that I don't think I could ever be able to do by myself to change in my life. But then if you think about like, well, if you had everyone else around you was doing those things, then you'd have no choice but to do those things, because that's like the new normal that you're living in. And that's one thing that I think is kind of cool about, like, when you think about like having roommates, or like my friend Sam is going to college in Boise, and that's the one thing that I'm jealous about, is because he gets to live with a couple of his friends in a room, like in a house, and you all have similar mentalities, you all have like similar interests, and you become a team because you live together. And imagine that environment, but with like people working on goals that isn't college, that's actually going to benefit the world, and like building a business, for example. And I don't know if you would want to live like with employees, but if you had all the people, say you had a friend group, even though apparently you're not supposed to start a business with your friends, being business partners with your friends, just picture this, just for this illustration. You have a friend group that you start a business with, and if you all live together and you all like enforce those things that I mentioned, like working out, eating healthy, focusing on work, getting your work done, and that's your environment, and you're all doing that towards one specific goal, then you can't possibly fail, because everyone is holding everyone else accountable. And it's a team thing, and it goes back to the team thing, and it makes so much sense. And that is the easiest way to change your life. Like in the Jim Rohn thing, he was talking about, like, isn't it amazing how in life at any day you can decide that you want to change your life, but most people never do. Hardly anyone decides that they want to change their life. And it's like, it is so true, because just being around people and looking at them. And one more story I wanted to end with to wrap this video up. On the Earl Nightingale video, he was talking about how he was in South Carolina, a really old town over there, and he didn't know anything, like, he didn't know the town very well because he hadn't been there before, so he hired a taxi to drive him around and kind of give him a tour of the town. And when they got to this really nice part, some of the oldest, finest houses on the shore, the taxi driver was telling him, all of those houses over there have 40 or more rooms. And then he paused, and he said, but they're all owned by crooks. And he said, I didn't feel like I was in the right mind. It wasn't the right time to teach him and explain to him and try to change his mind on that's his perspective and that's why he's a taxi driver. But he said that is the mentality that holds a lot of people back in life, because in this free country, in the United States, you can do whatever legal, you can do whatever you want as long as it's legal and it doesn't hurt someone else. And so what makes them crooks, right? But I'm going to wrap up the video there because it's getting kind of... If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Make sure you join that Discord link in the description. It's Online Brotherhood. We talk about a bunch of things in life. Share the video with a friend. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.